for the Agile community. www.Agile.FM.
Welcome back to another episode of Agile.FM, and today I have Nigel Thurlow with me. Nigel is the Chief of Agile at Toyota Connected. He is based out of Dallas in Texas, but he's a UK expat, and he can be reached at his Twitter handle, Nigel Thurlow. We also have other links for his work on our event page you can check out on Agile.FM. But before we get started talking about Toyota Connected, welcome to the podcast, Nigel.
Well, thank you, Joe. It's awesome to be here. I looked at some of the people who've participated with you recently, and it's a pleasure to be amongst such amazing company.
Of course, and we'll expand on the list, and not that you are next on the list, that this is not like a particular order, but I'm excited to have you here because we want to talk about Toyota Connected, and I always say connected at the end because I want you to possibly spell out for the listeners here what Toyota Connected is in contrast to Toyota itself.
Well, quite simply put, we were envisaged originally as a big data company, looking at the amount of data we can collect from the various systems on our vehicles and how we might be able to use that data to enhance our customers' experience behind the wheel. But we've gone beyond that now. We're looking at how we're going to be able to develop the next future of connected technologies for our mobility solutions. Toyota, as a global company under our president, Akio Toyoda, is sort of got a vision now of moving more to a mobility future where car ownership models may change or the use of transportation may change. And so Toyota wants to be at the forefront of that and enabling the appropriate mobility solutions for our customers and the people who use our vehicles. And of course, Toyota Connected is looking at the digital revolution in automotive technology. And we're really at the forefront of that technology.
Right, so it's everything digital, it's about analysis, it's about data compared to the actual car manufacturing, which is handled by the Toyota without the connected, right?
Yeah, that's correct. I mean, we're very, very much part of the larger manufacturing picture, but we are focused on the digital aspects, the connected car technologies, and things like ride sharing and other mobility solutions that have a digital aspect or a digital element to them.
Yeah, there's definitely a lot going on in that market. Can you just give us a little bit of a sense of the size of Toyota Connected, culture, things like that? What you guys, I mean, I think a lot of people know, and we're going to go to that topic as well, to the Toyota way and so on. But this is a separate entity here. So what's the size of Toyota Connected?
So we're quite a small company. We're about 200 people now, about 135 team members, and then some partners and contractors who work with us. We're based in Plano, just outside North Dallas, but we're actually an affiliate of Toyota Connected Japan, which is if you like, the parent of Toyota Connected over in Japan. We're a cousin of Toyota Motor North America, not a direct affiliate as such. And as far as culture is concerned, we were originally envisaged 2 years ago as a startup backed by a global organization. We've grown much more rapidly than I think the founders originally thought we would do. And now we're a fully fledged high-tech company in North Dallas. And had recently expanded into London. Toyota Connected Europe was announced very recently with offices in London. And so that expansion of Toyota Connected continues.
For somebody who is out of the UK, you come full circle at that point, right?
Now that's well, you know, I've not yet benefited from the business trips back home, but who knows in the future? Maybe that will become a perk of the job. We'll see.
All right, you just said it's a relatively new entity, Toyota Connected. Was this company transformed towards Agile and Lean, possibly, because there is this history of Toyota, or did you guys start already with that kind of culture in mind?
Yeah, our founders' focus was very much to be an agile organisation. They went in with the purpose of being a startup culture, but really from being an agile organisation straight away. Not specifically Scrum, but although we do use Scrum, and I'm going to talk about that later. Mm-hmm. But to enable agility and really from an agile point of view, to be able to make decisions rapidly, to change direction rapidly, to be able to respond to the market demands rapidly, and to be able to serve our customer first promise more effectively. So it was always envisaged as that type of organisation. Mm-hmm. And to that end, we have when people see photographs on the internet and visitors, and many people visit us on a frequent basis, they find very much a startup culture inside the organisation. We're an open space office. We have extremely nice furnishings and a very nice environment for people to work in. We bring lunches in every day from local restaurants. Mm-hmm. We provide beautiful coffee and various different refreshments. We have beer in the fridges if people so desire. We constructed the company in a way where we wanted to have people who enjoyed being there, create an environment where they could be creative, they could be innovative, and they enjoyed being, and a place where they want to bring people to show off where they work, family and friends and other associates, to show them the sort of environment that we've created. And that allows us to focus on the work and focus on the innovation, the creativity, and the solutions and the products and the innovation we'll bring into the market, rather than be sort of hampered by some of the traditional sort of office space constraints. We wanted to create an environment where that was no longer a constraint. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, no, definitely. I think you're painting a nice picture here of the workspace and all these things, and people probably getting right now a feeling of what this is going to look like. You have a history with Toyota. I'm not sure if I got the numbers right here, but roughly between 2006 and 10, you had already some work done with Toyota, and that's actually quite a few years ago. I know you have joined Toyota Connected roughly 1.5 years ago to do exactly that. But coming back to that time from 2006 to 2010 and then rejoining a little bit later again, there's a significant gap. What has changed or what do you have seen different in those years of your absence in terms of Agile and Lean? What were the developments, the differences?
So it's important to understand, first of all, and I've been talking about this quite a lot recently, the difference between Lean and Agile. There's sometimes these sort of religious wars between two different opposing forces tend to crop up, but Lean and Agile are different things, and they are heavily complementary, and you can be Lean without being Agile, and you can be Agile without being Lean. It's important to understand, first of all, that the term Lean is a term coined in a book called The Machine That Changed the World, and the MIT authors of that book coined the term Lean to describe the Toyota production system. And the Toyota production system is really where I got my start when I was based in Belgium, in Brussels, working with Toyota Motor Europe at the time. And I have a lot of my career to be thankful for by the people who trained and mentored me during those years, who helped me to understand what the Toyota production system was, what the Lean approach was, and the tools and the philosophies behind the Toyota production system. And really, Lean is about eliminating constraints in the system, removing excess waste in the system, and optimizing the system so we can deliver the value in the fastest possible way to the customer. So essentially what we're trying to do is deliver the highest quality at the lowest cost in the shortest lead time. And that is the philosophy behind what Toyota calls customer first. Where agility comes in is where we want to be able to respond rapidly to the changing customer demand, all the changes in the market, the changes in the economics. We want a way to be able to respond rapidly to the way things are changing. And so we can couple agility with Lean. We can optimize the way we deliver, but not be very agile, not be very responsive, not respond to that feedback. or we can add in agility and be very responsive to that feedback while delivering in the most optimal way.
Mm-hmm.
So for me, Lean and Agile are perfectly complementary.
Right.
So in my time back in Belgium in TME, of course, we were very lean, but we were not so agile. We were very waterfall focused in the way we delivered enterprise initiatives. We were not very responsive to customer feedback because, hey, the customer gave feedback at the end. And if they gave feedback which wasn't great, then that made another large-scale initiative and all the usual phases to get that delivered.
Mm-hmm.
What I've seen happen since I joined, started to do some work with Toyota Motor North America about 2.5 years ago, what I found is that there's now a desire to be able to be much more flexible, much more responsive, to be able to reduce the cost of delivery by ensuring that what we're delivering is the right thing. We can be delivering things the right way, which is lean, but we may not be delivering the right thing without building that agility in. So that's the sort of the way I'm seeing the world changing within Toyota, but also generally, is that we're moving, we still want to be very lean, we still want to embody lean principles and lean delivery, but now we need to be more responsive to the way the market is telling us to be.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think that's a great differentiator between those things, and I like the fact that it's complementary, right? And there shouldn't be really a war going on between those things. We do see some controversial talks at conferences out there, and I think what listeners, very easily can hear from you is that this those principles actually work very well hand in hand. I dug up some conference you spoke in 2017. You were already with Toyota Connected, and you spoke about Scrum being at Toyota Connected in particular. In that talk, being there for a year and how Scrum was treating you. How is it now being there? I don't know what it is, 9 months, 12 months later after that. How do you guys use Scrum? Because that talk was in particular about Scrum. What kind of things do you use it for?
Yeah, exactly. We are still using Scrum. Scrum is our predominant framework to enable us to be agile. And it's important to say that agility here, or being agile, is a result or an outcome. It's not the goal. We're not trying to become agile. What we're trying to do is to deliver our products and services better, faster, cheaper to our customers, and to deliver the appropriate solutions. And we become agile through the approaches that we adopt. Scrum has enabled us to become, let's just talk about a little bit about what I think Scrum is. I think that Scrum is a wonderful empirical planning tool, the best tool I've ever come up with for this particular approach. What Scrum is enabling us to do is to codify PDCA. So for the listeners, PDCA is Plan, Do, Check, Act. That's the original empirical process that comes from the work of Walter Schubert and then from Edwards Deming. And Toyota have been using PDCA for about 60 years now. What the problem is with PDCA, everybody understands the concept. It isn't very well understood of how long should planning last, how long should doing last, and what about checking and acting. So what Scrum's enabled me to do is to codify the PDCA cycle by applying the time box limits and by giving us a defined cycle of PDCA from between 1 and 4 weeks. Typically, our teams are doing 1-week sprints or 2-week sprints, and now we have a way of time boxing PDCA, of codifying what each element of PDCA should be, and that's enabling teams to start changing their behavioral characteristics and to start focusing on shortening the feedback loop with the customer and actually delivering very small incremental improvements in these short cycles, which of course Scrum calls sprints.
Yeah, no, this is that's PCDA, right? Definitely a concept, and Scrum empirical wraps these time boxes around it, even for the planning and the doing. You're absolutely right. How do listeners need to picture? I mean, you're talking about the concepts here, the processes, agility and lean. And you're giving a little bit of a picture of how the organization looks like. But how does your day actually look like? How do people have to picture a day in the life of Nigel at Toyota Connected? What do you?
A day in the life of Nigel may not be the best example of Scrum that it ought to be. And I can go into a little bit more about how we use Scrum and how we extend that to the executive leadership, how we extend that into planning the various different product cycles. So we can dig a little bit deeper into some of the scaling sort of side of things. But from my point of view, my role is predominantly, I've built a team of exceptionally talented people. I'm working with some of the best people I've ever had the pleasure to be engaged with. My philosophy is very simple. My team manages me. I report to my team. So in Toyota Connected, we have about 15 Scrum Masters that are deployed onto various teams within Toyota Connected. I also have a number of people that are working on my team to supporting Toyota Motor North America and our partners in our Agile sort of pursuits down at our big sister down the road. Essentially, my role is to support them, to mentor them, to give them the tools and the capabilities they need to be successful in working with teams and helping those teams to excel and become hyper-productive. The management model we've adopted across the organization is horizontal, similar to Spotify, where our team members are deployed onto teams but aren't managed vertically by a team manager or a delivery manager. We don't have those concepts. We have a horizontal management and support system. Those individuals are fully empowered. As David Marquette might say, we've moved the authority to where the information is. So we've given the ability for our Scrum Masters to figure out the best ways of supporting the teams they're working with and the best ways to enable those teams to be most successful they can be in the work they're delivering. So my day is spent variously supporting those members. We've formed what we call quality circles, which is more of a Toyota way of formalizing communities of practice so that we're able to work on continuous improvement and work on problem solving. Beyond that, I have established a number of training courses internally in Toyota, which we're delivering internally to help people understand Lean, Agility, Scrum, and various other practices to help them to be successful.
Nice.
So I'm spending a lot of time working on that set of classes and courses. Beyond that, we're doing research with the University of North Texas. They have a team science department. Together with themselves and Toyota Connected, we're studying things like the Cynefin model from David Snowden, complexity theory, complex adaptive systems, and looking at multi-team systems. We're looking at how we can evolve the current sort of Scrums practices into more effective multi-team systems. And we're working on some scholarly white papers in that area at the moment. So that's some of the basic things that I spend my day doing every day.
Wow. You just touched on a few things here, and maybe we can just take a deeper dive. You offer that before we took a dive into that question, scaling as well as the leadership piece of it, right? You just touched on how you lead and how you work with the teams, and clearing their path so that they can be agile. But what about the rest? What about the rest of Toyota Connected? The impact of Agile and Lean within your group or in your, let's say Texas area there, as well as the scaling piece. Why do you mention Scrum of Scrums, for example?
Okay, so let's talk a little bit about how we expand this to multi-team systems. The first thing is to say that my opinion, and it is my opinion, and it may be controversial for some, is that I don't believe there is any scaling framework. I think there are many tools and many methods, many approaches to the challenges of working with multiple teams on a single product, or perhaps even multiple teams with multiple products, which is a reality in large corporations. So I think there's many approaches and tools and systems out there. I do not believe there's any one-size-fits-all approach. I myself have a lot of experience with Scrum at scale. I was fortunate to be around Scrum at scale in the early days and working with some the customers who were implementing Scrum at scale. I'm fortunate that one of my groups is actually using Nexus. So Scale Professional Scrum is another approach we've looked at and experimented with. And indeed, I see a lot of merits and similarities with that and less large-scale Scrum. And indeed, there are some good aspects of the way large-scale Scrum or less approaches a scaling problem. But the issue is there isn't one single framework which you can just apply, and if everybody follows it, it works great. Whereas if you take Scrum, the basic framework, it seems to work in every context. We've got people in administration, in finance, in various other non-technical areas using Scrum as a behavioral framework with an empirical planning process and that feedback loop. And that's working fantastic in many contexts. And we feel it fits in every context, just like a PDCA cycle should. However, when we start to approach different types of multi-team product delivery, we're not finding a single approach works exactly as designed. So what we've started to discover and started to document are what we're calling patterns, which is a familiar word to a lot of Agile and Scrum practitioners.
Yeah, of course.
So we're starting to document behavior patterns. We're observing how teams work. We're observing how, in different contexts, teams function and the different things they have to do to enable agility and lean delivery, lean product flow, in various different contexts. And we're documenting those patterns, and we're starting to create a pattern library which allows us to say, well, okay, in this context, here are some patterns we've observed that work really well and they might work for you. And here are some patterns that we've observed don't work. Your mileage may vary, but because there's no one size fits all, but hey, here's some ideas that might work for you. So that's where our heads are at the moment, our research is. I'm very lucky that I'm working in a large living laboratory. I have this innovation incubator with a lot of amazing things happening. A lot of very, very talented individuals have formed into some pretty spectacular cross-functional teams. So we're able to observe them, and we're then able to sort of apply different ideas and observe whether it's a positive or a negative or amplifying or dampening certain types of characteristics. And when we find the things that work, we're documenting them. And through the work with UNT, University of North Texas, we're going to be able to share this with the greater community and have these practices and these patterns peer reviewed to sort of say, hey, these things really seem to work. And we think that's a better approach than just trying to slap a pre-configured framework over that. It doesn't mean to say that these frameworks aren't helpful and useful, and many people may find them exactly that. What we're saying is we're finding we need to be adaptive to become more agile through our own research, and we want to share that back with people who are trying to do these same challenges.
Right. So some of those patterns, just to clarify here and make sure that I understand this right, so some of those patterns might come from Scrum at Scale and Nexus, the two you just mentioned, and then obviously the ones you're identifying on your own while you're working through some of those multi-team agile efforts. Is that correct?
Absolutely. I mean, to give you an example, we use the Meta-Scrum pattern. The Meta-Scrum pattern was originally defined before Scrum at Scale, but then as Scrum at Scale matured, the Meta-Scrum pattern became a sort of a core part of Scrum at Scale. So we use a variant of the Meta-Scrum pattern that I'd been familiar with in previous slides. And we've now got that working to a level where we scale product ownership to the executive level. Chief Exec and President of the company, Zach Hicks, and his leadership team all participate in a regular, what we call an executive Meta-Scrum, which is where we're looking at the progress of various initiatives, the progress of various product deliveries. We're looking at the alignment of what our core message is and our core customer demand across the organization is. And then we start to look at the priorities of that work at a more abstractive level, at a meta level, a much higher level. And we're able to make prioritization decisions. So currently our executive Meta-Scrum occurs for 2 hours every month, where all of our chief product owners, and we can always look at that, explore that concept if need be, chief product owners are actually working with the executives, and the executives are fully engaged and looking at the progress of the organization, of our main product focus, and then deciding how to make adjustments, if adjustments are necessary, to ensure we're prioritizing what is always going to be a limited set of resources and a limited set of capabilities from our people to actually ensure we're delivering the maximum value for our customers. So this is how we've taken these patterns, we've adapted the patterns to fit the organization appropriately.
Well, it's also going to be interesting to see with your growth over the years or the upcoming years, because we probably can all agree on that the stuff you guys are focusing on is probably having a huge impact on the near future, and your company most likely will grow, and we can then see the pattern catalog change or increase based on more learnings of scaling if a company grows to multi levels and to the hundreds of employees. Yeah, go ahead.
No, I was going to say that's actually interesting, because we're also experimenting with the same approaches in our big sister company down the road, of course, which is Toyota Motor North America. The IS division there ranks around about 4,500 people. So that's a large scale to be able to implement agile approaches and to gain agility in that organization. So we're using the same approaches, and with Metascrum we've sort of created a multi-layered approach there between the executives and the sort of chief product owners. And we've introduced something called the leadership Metascrum, because we're looking. Some of the research I'm working on at the moment, of course, is going back to the work that Professor Robin Dunbar did on Dunbar's number. A number often used, it's used by SAFe, but it's a number that's often discussed, and it's actually 148, but mathematically rounded to 150. And people like Bill Gore of Gore-Tex, he took the Dunbar's number principle to the extreme where once a factory reaches 150 people, he goes and builds another factory. So quite a famous case study. He doesn't allow any business to exceed 150 people. And the reason for that is that, as Professor Dunbar said, the number of sort of cognitive or meaningful relationships that individuals can maintain in a stable way sort of peaks at about 150 people. And so what we're now starting to look at is, well, what does that mean for us at Toyota Connected? And what does that mean for the bigger landscape at our big sister company? Does that mean we need to start looking at smaller, self-contained, fully functional, end-to-end units that allow them to function like a small business and to maintain those cognitive relationships? And if it does, then how do we implement that without being disruptive to the larger picture? Because clearly in the USA, we have tens of thousands of people working in our various different sort of departments and divisions within Toyota, within the US. And so how do we apply this sort of concept without being overly disruptive and ensuring we continue to maintain our speed of delivery and our quality of product? So this is some of the research we're looking into in complexity theory and how we build effective organizations and maintain those effective limits. Because when you start looking at Scrum of Scrums as a pattern, you can scale Scrum of Scrums infinitely. Right. But are we really going to have a Scrum of Scrum, a Scrum of Scrum, a Scrum of Scrum, and so on? And we need to have a more effective way to enable rapid decision-making and effective leadership through a large, complex organization.
Yeah, you mentioned earlier, we talked about, just the book, The Toyota Way, the machine that changed the world. We talked a lot about that, the PDCA cycle being 60 years, you mentioned, or 60 years old, or young, however you want to see it, right? And so one of the things I wanted to touch on, and you actually said earlier in our recording, you referred to the Spotify model. I remember the early days of Agile. There was a lot of references to Toyota out of the Lean movement, right? But also in the Agile movement, the Toyota Way. There were keynote speakers and so on. But these days we hear a lot of companies copying, modeling after like something like Spotify, right? And what's your take on that in terms of the Toyota way of doing things? Being very successful in what you guys are doing, and mimicking a Spotify model, or maybe that's part of the pattern catalog, or how do you see those things differ? What kind of advice do you have to listeners by going after a model like Spotify, and here you're doing your own pattern catalog, for example, on scaling, right? But probably also many, many other things. What's your advice to the listeners?
Interesting. Well, I mean, a couple of things you've touched on there, the Toyota way. So first and foremost, any Toyota company and Toyota Connected is no different at all. We are very focused and very aware of our past, what that means to us. The Toyota way is a sort of set of 14 principles of how we think we should behave as an organization. It's a well-documented, it was documented very well by Dr. Jeff Leiker in his book, The Toyota Way. And it's based upon internal documents and principles which are very well articulated in that book. And I highly recommend that to anybody who wants to learn a little bit more about the Toyota Way. But if you see the Toyota Way as a set of principles and philosophies, very much like the Agile Manifesto is a set of values and principles which gives you the philosophy of being agile. That's what the Toyota Way does for Toyota members. Toyota's production system, which is more commonly called lean production or lean management, that's really the tools and the mechanics and how we enable ourselves to be lean and to deliver rapidly and to optimize the system of delivering the right product. So these are things that a lot of people have been influenced, and indeed I recently was talking to Dave West at Scrum.org and was talking about some comments that Ken Schwaber was making, and he said himself that a lot of the thinking that went behind Scrum came from Toyota's production system, or TPS, otherwise known as Lean, coupled with the empirical planning process from DuPont. So clearly there was two major companies there that influenced the way that Scrum evolved over the years. From my point of view, looking at Spotify, there's great things that Spotify have done. The work that was done at Spotify, and people like Henry Nieberg made that very, very visible to the rest of the world, was groundbreaking and extremely good at helping to deliver high-performing teams. Now we're moving on into complexity theory and the work of Cynefin under David Snowden, and looking at how building teams is more than just putting people together and say, hey, you're a team. And so you've got to look about things like task interdependency. Do we actually need a team? And funnily enough, do we actually need to be agile? If you're making house bricks, maybe agility is not such a big issue. But if you're making mobile phones or the latest connected car technologies, then agility probably is very important. So you've got to look at context, what it is that you actually need and what it is you're actually trying to achieve, rather than just doing it because everybody else is doing it. And then what you've got to do is really take the time to study and learn what others have shown us that have gone before, which is what I've been spending a lot of my time doing. But then actually look at what it is you're trying to achieve in your context. What makes sense for your organization? One of the key things here that I've been looking at again more recently, going back to, is that people tend to focus on organizational efficiency. So how do we reorganize our people, and how do we look around with the org chart and actually optimize our organizations, rather than looking at how to optimize what's known as flow efficiency, which is how do we get the product or service to the customer in the most rapid way, and to optimize the system and the people to enable that to happen. Once you start looking at it from a flow efficiency point of view, and you start to look at teaming behavior and how we enable great teams to work together, great people to work together to become great teams, which involves training and coaching and mentorship. You can't just stick people together and go, hey, be a great team. And we see that when we study, you see that when you study great sports teams, you know, whether American football teams or rugby teams like the New Zealand All Blacks. We learn when we study how they work that coaching is a huge part of how they become successful. So once you understand your context and you understand what it is you're trying to achieve, then start to look at tools and mechanisms and frameworks and teachings and learning from other people who have already done it to see what applies in your context. Once we at Toyota started to look at that, or Toyota Connected started to look at it from that perspective, we start to recognize that just following the ABCs isn't really going to fix everything. And indeed, even I get pushback in the office about, purist Scrum.
Yeah, no, definitely. I got really very much interested in your explanations, your thoughts, and how this company is being structured. Nigel, if somebody like me listens to this episode right now and says, "I would love to see this," do you guys do like any kind of go-sees? Can people approach you? Is there any way? I know you guys working on top secret things, but is there any way for people to connect with you and possibly see what you guys are doing in action?
Yeah, they can definitely reach out to myself and my team. I mean, that people do all this all the time through LinkedIn. They email me. They come to various events, and we host visitors continuously. I mean, the other day I was presenting as part of a group of presenters to a delegation of dealers from Japan who are in to see us. So we get people from around the world coming in to see us. We get people from the local markets coming in, individuals asking if they can come and look around. So we're very open to hosting people to come and have an exploration of how we're doing things. Yes, we're working on NDA inventions and techniques and things as we're going forward, but we're careful to make sure that you don't take photographs of the wrong things and we don't expose you to the things that you shouldn't really hear about right now. But we're very happy to welcome people from time to time on a pre-planned basis, just to say to them, hey, look, you can come and see how we're doing this and see whether it will help you in your own journey.
Nice. Awesome. I want to say thank you, Nigel, for all, and by the way, all these kind of links and so on, I will make sure will be on the events page on Agile.FM so that people can reach out and get in touch with you, possibly get a clarification on a few things and stay literally connected with you at Toyota Connected. I had to do that, and hopefully,
that's okay.
And hopefully, with the expansion of Toyota Connected, you get a few trips back to the UK, and just want to say thank you for your time, and this was very insightful. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Joe. I appreciate it. Thank you very much.
Thank you for listening to Agile.FM, the radio for the Agile community. I'm your host, Joe Krebs. If you're interested in more programming and additional podcasts, please go to www.agile.fm. Talk to you soon.